Hello, everyone, and welcome to Bourbon Bites. My name is Clifton. Welcome to another Thursday night live stream. Tonight has been one that I have been anticipating for a very long time because I have one of my absolute favorite guests that I've had for on the channel joining me to taste through some new expressions. So I've been waiting on this for a while. I'm so glad that you guys are excited too. I've seen people on Discord have been talking about this stream, so I'm so excited to share these with you. Yeah, let's just dive right in. Without further ado, please welcome back to the show Master Blender from Doc Swinson's Jesse Parker. I almost got this swapped around.
Hey, I feel like I do enough myself. Thank you, Clifton. I'm very happy to be here. This is our third podcast, I think, together.
The third one, yeah, we did a couple last year, and it's been a while though. So I know you guys have been up to some really cool stuff. So I'm excited to give them a try.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having us on here. I think you're among the first people to do a podcast with me on for some of our new expressions. So that's actually really exciting, especially some of our more intense expressions.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, these are so exciting. So for those of you in the chat, I actually had a Patreon tasting at my TRC. Todd Cooper's in the chat. Todd is at my Bourbon Terabyte tier, which gets a private monthly tasting with me, and I sent him all of these samples to taste through them with me over the past weekend. Got some tasting notes preemptively, but I can't wait to go back through them. But yeah, y'all are in for a treat with these because these are super interesting. But before we get into like these casks, tell us a little bit about, for the people that may not be familiar with Doc Swinson's or yourself, tell them a little bit about what you do and the brand.
Yeah, certainly. So I mean, we're primarily we're an NDP, so non-distiller producer that's sourcing like 90% plus of our whiskeys are all from MGP using 4 different mash bills that we blend every single one of our expressions in-house here in the Pacific Northwest, just north of Seattle, Washington. And we primarily focus on finishing casks from all around the world. That's our main drive, but we also do unique blends for our straight bourbons as well. So for those of you that aren't quite keen on finishing casks yet, start there. We'll get you into those finishing casks soon.
Well, I'm such a fan of just the experimentation that you guys have done. Like, obviously it's called Exploratory Cask series, but some of the ones have been a bit out there and a bit wild, but they've become some of my favorite whiskeys. Like, I included Smoke on Water as one of my top whiskeys of last year. I love that release. I see a few people in the chat also are saying they love them. Let's see. Peter White says, I usually pick up every Doc Swinson's Exploratory Cask available. Alter Ego and El Cuerpo are my favorites right now.
Oh, thank you so much, Peter. That's awesome to hear. Actually, another round of those just came out as well, of the El Cuerpo, which was particularly exciting because I think they were the oldest set of casks that we had. So,
oh wow!
Is that all of our exploratories will change? What's that?
Is that what kind of cask is it? Is it tequila? I'm just based on the name. I don't know.
The El Cuerpo is the Pedro Jimenez.
Okay. Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, so the sherry.
Ooh, that sounds delicious.
Yeah, it's part of the Alter Ego lineup. So we usually once a year I'll release the Mind, Body, and Spirit, which is El Cuerpo, La Mente, and L'Esprit. And it's the Cognac, the Oloroso, and the Pedro Jimenez sherries as individual bottlings. So you could try them on your own, and you could even try and one-up me and do your own blend if you find all 3 bottles, because it incorporates all 3 of those in there.
Yeah, that's awesome. I don't think I've tried that. I haven't seen, these are hard to come by. These things sell quick. I see them pop up at our stores and they're gone so quickly. So
I mean, that's good news for us, I guess. Sorry.
Definitely have fans in California, apparently. Fred said, I wish I could drink them during the stream. I have the Amburana, Garryana, and tequila finished with me. Gotta wait till they hang out after. Okay, well, Fred.
Oh, you have some of the fun ones, the incredibly fun ones. Like all 3 of those are pretty rare.
Yeah, and then James says the Doc Swinson's Amburana cask is the goo from the middle of a homemade apple pie. I can attest to that. I think that's why we're saving that one for the end, because it's going to be such an intense flavor profile. But yeah, and then Sugar Kitty says, I got the Smoke on Water as a sample from me. Very nice. So yeah, you got some fans here in the chat.
That's awesome. That's great. That's good to see. I feel like I haven't done a lot of the these podcasts or anything for quite a while, so it's nice to kind of get back on. And it's kind of funny, the Smoke on Water, I'm working on a different form of that release. I'm still working on a name, but it incorporates rum as well.
Oh, interesting. So like a sweet and smoky kind of thing.
A couple islands get together sort of thing.
Oh, that's wait. So when you're thinking like rum, is it like more of like a Jamaican style, like funky rum, or are we talking more like
more maybe a little bit less on the Jamaican rum, and more focus on towards like what's our blend for our Solera system. There is some Jamaican in it, but it's really our Solera system rye. But I wanted to see what happened if I put those in our XP Scotch casks.
Ooh.
And we're still kind of tweaking the flavor profiles on that one and seeing how they age. So, but we're really excited about them. In fact, they might come out this fall. So
Awesome.
I'll let you know.
Yeah, I'll definitely keep an eye out. Tim says he just got the Bossa Nova last week, and it's a cinnamon bomb. Man, everyone's excited for that one. I can't wait to dive into that one with you.
You know, when we released that one, we had a huge spike in people trying to find it on our website, which is kind of funny. So it's just a hot topic product right now, right? Amburana is the, I don't know, it's the new IPA for Finnish whiskeys, I guess.
I would say I've seen it in some American whiskeys, but not in bourbon. So I'm excited to kind of see how it works with bourbon. But we do want to start with the lower proof expression of the night, which is the new session blend bourbon.
Yeah.
Yeah, as you can tell, I've been enjoying this quite a bit.
You're beating me here, Bob.
Tell us a little bit about this one, how it came about, and you told me a little bit before the stream about it, but I'd love to hear from you what you think of this, or like what this is for.
Yeah, so Session Blend is kind of our answer to delivering the same quality and blending techniques that we use in all of our other spirits, particularly like Blender's Cut. With a different ratio, more geared towards use in cocktails and for people who aren't used to higher proof bourbons. Because everything else we release, other than the two alter egos, everything's over 100 proof, which isn't necessarily for everybody. We're just kind of nerds about it and love it.
It's for us.
Yeah, and which is great. But you know what? I mean, part of the goal here is to also get more people interested in bourbon, and we wanted to find a blend that works incredibly well in cocktails. It's definitely more economically priced, so to speak. Sure. So you can use this one to literally go out on the weekend with your friends and just enjoy it by a fire or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, the whole idea was to, I lost you.
Oh, can you see me?
There we go. No, my monitor's decided to go.
Okay, I was like, it looks good on my end, but you never know with this site.
I'll just have to move the mouse once in a while. I guess it doesn't recognize.
Oh, gotcha.
Anyways, so Session Blend was really designed so you didn't have to think too hard about the bourbon, but we wanted you just to be able to go in and enjoy it. Put it in a cocktail. Don't feel like you have to savor it, over the course of months or something like that, like some of our special, like limited releases. This one, we want to just make a lot of it. And it's, I've had a lot of our distributors and stuff also be like, oh, is this just Blender's Cut at a lower proof? And actually, it's not. So our Blender's Cut, for those of you who don't know, is 115 proof. Blended two different mash bills from MGP. This one sounds almost like it, but at 90 proof. When we went to design this one, like I said, the idea was to have something that was more approachable to the maybe not so high proof bourbon drinker and be really versatile for cocktails, because we hadn't put out a whiskey that was really specifically with that intention in mind. So that's what we focused on. And it took a good couple months to get down a base blend that we wanted to work with. And then we did actual trials. So we invited a whole bunch of people to one of our local bars, Jack's, and they do a lot of really nice high-end cocktails and stuff like that. And we invited a bunch of people there and made several classic American cocktails with it up against several other standard American bourbons that you would find in the same price point. So it's about $35 or so, depending on what state you're in. And we took a poll at the end, and even I was blinded by that one. So I wasn't allowed to know either. So I couldn't be super biased about it. And everybody was really stoked about it, and we did very well in our own competition.
I was gonna say I've kind of feel like I've evolved from using 80 proof whiskeys for cocktails. I feel like I love a good spirit forward cocktail. So 90 proof, like you said, that's such a good, it's not overwhelming to someone that may not be super familiar with it, but it gives you a little bit extra kick than the regular 80 proof for sure.
Exactly. And that's why we came up with the name Session Blend. It was kind of our joke off of a session beer, because for us, this is a sessionable whiskey instead. So there's a little bit of tongue in cheek in the name as well. So enjoy Session Blend. You don't have to hang out with it for too long.
I'm still going to hang out with it for a minute though. I'm going to say the note on this, it's interesting though, because it's it has a bit of a floral kind of honey character to it for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's where I'm getting the sweetness from.
It's got a heavier percentage of the 21% bourbon from MGP in it than the 36.
Okay, got it.
Which Blender's Cut is a little more heavier on the 36.
Oh, interesting. Was there a particular reason that this stood out going with more of that other mash bill? Is it maybe more for cocktail focused, or just curious what the thought was behind that?
I think overall, in order to balance out the boldness in the cocktail, we still wanted the higher rye percentage as well as a little bit higher proof point. That's why we put it at 90 versus 80, 82, 83, 84. We even tried 86, 87, 88, 89, and we were just like, meh. 90 spoke to all of us overall, so we went with 90 proof on it. And the 21, I think, exhibits a little bit more sweetness from the corn, higher corn content. So it's a little bit easier, I think, for a lot of people to jump into as far as a bourbon goes, because we do work with high rye bourbons, and there's a lot of people out there that really like wheated bourbons, and I think they'd really enjoy this as well.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think I was really taken aback by when I first tasted it, because it has a lot of viscosity and character that you don't typically get in a 90 proof whiskey. So I could see this holding up. I haven't tried it over ice yet, but I could see it holding up over ice, just whether you do it that or neat or in a cocktail. I'm gonna have to try it with a cocktail, because like it's really great for, like you said, the price point. Like there's not very many age stated whiskeys out there. By the way, if those y'all are curious, it's minimum 5 years.
Thanks. You're definitely better at sales than me. It is a 5-year age statement, which we're doing our best to hold that statement as long as we possibly can. So I wouldn't worry about it for a while. Hopefully never.
Do you guys do a bit of the aging where you are? Like, does it age in your location?
Yeah. So what we typically do up here in the PNW is we bring the barrels from MGP when they've hit about 4 to 4.5 years old. Typically, it's 4.5. Sometimes they're a little older as well, just depend on what stocks we have available already here. But we will continue to age them here until we want to use them for certain blends. Some of them we've been continuing to age for years already, like a couple years on top of that. And we're noticing an interesting change that we don't find from similar whiskeys still sitting in the Midwest.
Got it. That's awesome. And all the finishing, you guys do all of that. Like, do you have like a rick house? I'm curious what the setup's like up there.
If this camera was detachable, I would walk you through it. And one of these days we'll have to do that, and I'll do a live thing. But you can always follow us at Doc Swinson's Whiskey on Instagram too. And we do lots of videos where we show you our rick house. There's probably the best way to see it. And anyways, this is my office, and it's kind of a wreck still. But
how is it wreck? There's so much whiskey around you. It's like the perfect office.
It's great. I'm just not the most clean person in the world. No, I'm just kidding. Just a lot of bottles, a lot of labels. But just through this door to my left, actually, we can go through the main office and the lunch area, and then we have a whole warehouse out there with several hundred barrels sitting in it. So, and all of our finishing casks are done here. All the blending is done here as well. We have another building next door to this one, where we have massive blending tanks. And that's where we do all the barrel dumping, blending over there, and then we'll bring it back over here for maturation for further finishing. And then our bottling lines over there as well. So we actually control everything from essentially once MGP produces it to shipping the bottle to the retailer, which I found out more recently, not that many NDPs actually do that. So, which to each their own. Honestly, they're maybe smarter because it's probably cheaper not to own a bottling plant.
Oh yeah, I didn't think. So what's the typical process? Do they just go with someone that's already at that distiller? They're getting them the.
Some do. Some people have their own bottling plants as well. We're by no means unique in that regard. But a lot of different brands will also just contract bottle in Tennessee or Kentucky. There's dozens of contract bottlers that will take your product for you, and they'll even do the blending portion. Like you might say, hey, you need this many barrels, go into this batch of this type and whatnot. But yeah, you can do all this from an office if you really wanted to. Might not be as good. Though. I don't know. Maybe it'll be better. Who knows?
Well, no, that's fun. I mean, I think like with the title, Master Blender. I think we talked about it a little bit last time. Is like you get to it seems like something you get to have fun with it. You always seem so passionate, excited about all the different releases you guys have coming up.
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, that's awesome to hear. We are excited about everything we do, and that's why we wanted to do all this in hand. And maybe it costs a little bit more for freight because we live up here in the Pacific Northwest, but it's worth it because we have full control over every single barrel that we process through here. We taste all of them. They all get dedicated to certain types of batches, depending on where we want to put them, finishing or straight whiskey, based on their flavor profiles. And you know what the best part about it is I got to walk back there every single day, and I could try a few different barrels, and I keep notes on all of those barrels. And as certain ones start to mature in the way that I'm looking for, then I could say, hey, we're pulling this barrel first thing in the morning, or even that day, which gives us the ultimate control over the product. We also control exactly how we wash our bottles, what they're washed with, how many turns they get blended in the blend tank, because that's going to introduce oxygen. Like there's all these different impacting factors that we actually have control over, which is kind of cool. Not everybody does that, which doesn't make us better. It's just
right.
It's just what we wanted, and we do think it impacts the product quite significantly.
Yeah, I think that's something that we don't really think about very much just as, consumers. We think, of course, of the barreling and, all that, but we don't think about what happens next, what happens when a
Yeah.
barrel is slightly like, what's the process? So it's great that you guys can like, like I said, in-house, same day. If you think this is perfect, no, not a day more, this needs to be bottled. Like that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, we've got little tanks on standby everywhere, just in case we're like this bit. I mean, then that doesn't usually happen in the finishing process. Usually it's not day by day, but there are
Right.
some products that we'll try a little later that you have to be extremely diligent at paying attention to. Otherwise, they can go awry really quickly and not the good kind of rye.
I like the fun there. That was great.
Not even a dad, but I'm
Well,
trying.
cool. Well, I'm excited to get into some of these. I want to say hello to a few other people in the chat that are just chiming in. Donnie says, "How much for that wonderful apartment?" I assume he's talking about your office there.
You just come check it out. I don't know if you'll want it after you see the other side.
And I see a few people joining. Good to see so many folks here. Sugar Kitty says, "Taste all of them. Heaven forbid. Do you need a professional mouser at the distillery?" Oh, Sugar Kitty's looking for a job. He's like, "Oh, you need to get your taste tested." Gotcha. Okay.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Hey, if we accepted everybody, my guess is we'd have more people than barrels at this rate.
Exactly. Well, you guys, I know last time we talked, you talked about potentially doing a bit of a tasting room. Are you guys still planning to maybe do something like that?
Yes, we are, and we're just incredibly slow at it because we're a teeny team, and we're really focusing on making sure as we grow, we maintain our quality of our whiskey and try and expand it to more markets, so we can make this less rare for some of you, so you could hopefully find it easier. That's our first focus, but we are trying to get all the permitting in line and design up what we think is the best option for us for this building. Which we think will be relatively simple, but we want to showcase the barrels, and it'll be in the barrels, which is the cool part. So you can actually like be a part of the magic that we're actually producing. So yes, we are working on it, but my guess is maybe in the early new year.
Oh, that's not, I mean, in the scheme of things, that's not too far away. So yeah, sounds like there's some progress happening. That's exciting. I can't wait to hopefully one day come up and visit and, try everything. Cause like I said, I've enjoyed everything I've had from you guys. So I'm excited to get into these new ones. Now, some of these are returning expressions of the exploratory cask. They're just a different batch. Is that correct?
Yes, I mean, for one, there are only so many barrels to finish in.
Sure.
We haven't exhausted that by any means. But two, the next thing is to, like, for example, the last 2 years have been really just trying all these different experiments and making what we think is the best out of what we're trying to produce. And now our next goal is to kind of refine the processes on some of them to improve the flavors if we can, improve our techniques if we can, and come up with even better blends. So that's why we put batch numbers on them, right? So you can kind of track that. So if you liked one in the past, we hope you'll like the second one equally or maybe even more. But we'll find out exactly what's going on as they get released. But yes, a lot of them are repeats, but we do change up a few different things about it. Might be the ratios of the different whiskeys we're blending together. Might be the flavor profiles we're trying to start with. And it also might be a different source for the same type of casks.
Got it. Is there a way for people to track to see which batch they have? Let's say it's like a 2022 and a 2023 batch. Is there like a laser code or is there something people can look at?
Yeah, so all of the bottles have this little, it just says release number. I don't know if you can kind of see that.
Let me see if I can full screen you. There's a way. I just always forget how to do it. Here we go.
So it says, sorry, my camera's 23-0001. So the 23 stands for the year, so 2023. And this is the first release of an exploratory cask that we did in 23. So this won't be, if this had 2 next to it, for example, it might be a different product. But it's under this particular line. So exploratory cask line corresponds to the year and then the number of the release that we did that year. And we might do 10 or 15 and they'll just count up, but they'll be different types.
Got it. Yeah, I noticed on the listings on the website, like you break it down based on the batch. So it's like sometimes it's like the 2022 batch, but there's also like a sheet for the 2023 batch. So I love that. I love the transparency there, just talking about the different mash bills, the range of ages. Like the nerd in me just loves that info. So y'all are doing really great putting that out there.
Thank you. You do a lot of research. I appreciate that.
Of course. I mean, I'm a fan of like I said, I think actually Tony Bag of Donuts with the super chat saying, did you have Jesse on a while back? Yes, I've had him on twice before last year. I think the first time we just did the lineup with the alter egos, and then we did a second one with the exploratory cask. So yes, I've had you on more than any other brand, like just like back to back, like an interview. So
right on.
congratulations, but also
Woo!
thank you for
I
coming
love
on.
it. Well, our
And
first
thank
two
you.
were like kind of back to back, weren't they? They were really quick, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. So we did the other one. And I think I just had a mystery package show up like a week later. I'm like, what are these for? And then I was like, do you want to come back on the show and do them? So we didn't plan the second one, but like it was so much fun to taste through those because that was a ton of different expressions. I think this was my first time trying any of the exploratory casks. So
Right on. Yeah, there's I think we've released like 9 that release or something
it
like
was a
that.
lot. I was feeling pretty
Yeah,
good after that.
you got the really fun ones, the super like way out there ones, the Smoke on Water and the Tres Amigos, right?
And the
Yeah,
funky drummer. Yeah.
Funky Drummer. Yeah, those were all extremely fun finishes that you don't find those kind of things very commonly.
Yeah. Well, speaking of fun finishes, shall we move on to one of these new expressions? Where do you think?
Absolutely.
Where should we start? We got 4 different ones here. I'll let you just decide the order we go in, and we can talk a little bit about each of them.
Yeah, why don't we? Why don't we start with the Garryana?
Okay.
So, I think that would be a fun one to go with. Yeah, this one's like dear to us here at Doc Swinson's because it incorporates a tree that grows here, which doesn't really grow much else in the world. So, I don't know, have you ever heard of Quercus Garryana?
I've heard of it. I've seen it used in different spirits, but not in bourbon. So I'm excited to see like how it interacts with the bourbon because I mean I feel like most people don't not on the West Coast aren't familiar with it at all. So but you said it's like is it native to like your specific area that you guys are based in?
Yeah, it is actually. I mean, so Quercus Garryana, or more commonly known as organ oak, has been not very commonly used in spirits because one, it's an expensive tree to get a hold of. It's a protected tree, so it has to be dead before you can harvest it. And commonly, it only grows from northern California to southern BC, and only on the coast, with the exception of one small little group of trees in Idaho. That was
Really?
left over from it was left over before the Cascades, I guess, were formed.
Oh wow, okay.
Which is so it's been around a while. It's a really interesting tree, and it's kind of like if French oak had a child with American oak, and like Quercus rubra and Quercus alba, right? It's a wide grain, and if it had a child, so it's fickle to work with. So most coopers in the United States don't even want to touch it. Let alone it's not, like I said, it's not the most available oak in the world by any means. And we don't have a lot of coopers on the West Coast, but we have a few, and a few of them have taken on the burdening task of making barrels out of these, and one in particular out of the Willamette River Valley. But they grow up, the trees grow all over this area. We're on the coast here. And in fact, one of the towns where on the island that I'm from is named after the tree. So I think it's just kind of a fun little and they have little plaques on all of them all in town. They're like, I'm a Quercus Garryana. Don't spray paint me.
Well, and that's something very unique to like the Pacific Northwest that you don't really see in Kentucky. Is like most are by the book traditional. We have been seeing a lot more of like French oak. I've seen that in a lot of different distilleries, but yeah, this is definitely something different. And I will say, I had this in the glass when I did my tasting with Todd this past weekend, and the nose transformed every time I revisited it. Like it surprised me how much this whiskey seems to change in the glass. I don't know if you've experienced the same, but like up front to me, it's like super like it started out just being like a cinnamon stick, not like cinnamon sugar, but just like the actual cinnamon stick. But then I let it sit for a minute, went back to some other whiskeys, and then came back to it. And I got like pure maple syrup. It was so sweet. So I'm curious, like what flavor profile you're going for with this.
No, absolutely. So the funny thing is, it's basically like taking American oak profiles, so like caramel, excuse me, caramel and vanilla, and just kind of like transforming them into something a little bit more intense. That's basically what this oak tends to do as a finishing cask. So it takes that caramel and transforms it more into like molasses cookies kind of thing going on in there.
Definitely.
And
darker,
then
really rich
it does have a fair amount of vanilla in it, but I think it goes more towards like baking spices. And it definitely has a ton of cinnamon going on. We get that quite often too. And same thing with you. Sorry, you said maple donut. Is that what you said?
Well, I said maple syrup on the nose.
Syrup.
Yeah.
One time we all smelled this and we're like, oh, this is like this literally smells like what is it? A maple bar. Which is really fun. So it's basically like a richer, like darker profile that you get out of an American oak. But still, if you just probably gave it to somebody that's not even that familiar, or didn't know that it was finished in another barrel, you might not pick up on that fact. So it's still subtle. At least I think so.
Yeah, I think one of the things that stands out to me on the palate with this one is like it does have like a little bit darker some of the leather and the tobacco, like richer notes, which probably do
Mhm.
come from that oak finish. But there's like to me, there's like a bit of like a what is that? There's like a peppercorn that like kind of numbs your palate. I forget what.
Szechuan.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm getting a
Szechuan
bit of
peppercorn.
that experience with this, and like in a good way. Like it like tingles and it kind of makes my tongue go a little numb, but it kind of lets those cinnamon flavors kind of dance around a bit. I like that a lot.
Oh, totally. I don't know if I picked up on that as much originally. It's funny going back and tasting all your products again, especially after they've been bottled for a while, because I'm always
Oh yeah.
blending them before, like while they're in casks and stuff, and then they get bottled and they go through like a bit of a shock. So everything tends to taste a little bit different in the bottle after a few months.
I'm sure, yeah. Well, I think to me that's not a note that I typically get with that like peppercorn note that actually came again from my
Hmm.
friend Todd. I'm giving him a lot of shout outs. I know he's in the chat, but he's really great. Like, we spend like 3 hours sitting here tasting through these things. So I got a little bit of research ahead of time. But yeah, to me, it's very different.
That's
To me, I wouldn't say that like I mean, I assume this is still the same base Indiana bourbon
Yep.
for all of these, right?
Yes.
I think this transforms it to a whole different like flavor experience. I think I would not guess that this is Indiana bourbon. I love Indiana bourbon, but I wouldn't guess that because it's such a
It-
unique flavor.
It's a pretty tannin heavy oak as well. So you're probably getting more qualities I feel like you get in like an older Kentucky bourbon. I don't
Oh
know if
yeah.
that adds to it at all, but and the interesting thing too is this had it was still just the standard mash bills from MGP that we
Mhm.
used, the 21 and the 36. But it was also a small portion of the blend that went into the casks. Was actually these casks that were really unique in flavor profile. We specifically put them aside and dumped them for this project.
Mm.
And it was really reminiscent of our 15-year Kentucky bourbon, which is really interesting. So
Oh
that's probably
wow.
what you're also picking up on. And we thought it was so wow, we're like, this would be do incredibly well with the Garryana oak.
I think so. I mean, I think it, like I said, it doesn't distract. Like it's still very clearly like got that sweeter, the more typical bourbon base. But you said baking spices. Yeah, this is totally like more so than obviously than like a non-finished expression. But that's interesting. I've not really had much experience with Garryana oak, so might have to keep an eye out for this one because this is hitting like it's good. It's really good.
Yeah, this was kind of our little bit of our sleeper release because the one we're gonna talk about a little bit later, like took all the
Oh yeah.
all the limelight. And I was like, oh no. And I didn't really talk that much about the Garryana oak. And it was a fairly small release. We did it wasn't that little, it was a couple hundred cases. But for the whole country, it wasn't a lot everywhere. But it was really exciting one at the very least. And this one so far has like kind of crept up in various channels, and people have been like, "Wow, this is wild! Like we haven't seen anything like this in bourbon before." And to my knowledge, I have never seen an American whiskey finished. Sorry, like a bourbon or a rye whiskey finished
Right.
in a Garryana. I have seen, most people are familiar with Westland's
Hmm.
single malt finish, the Garryana one, and they're also like down the street from us, so like an hour and a half that way. But
Right.
they're the only ones that I know of that have actually released something in Garryana oak, and theirs is totally different profile. So
Yeah, no, I've had both, and yeah, like you said, like totally, like they're American single malt, so it's a completely
yeah,
different style of whiskey. I think it's interesting to see how the different, whether it's a rye, a bourbon, or American single malt, how those casks affect it. I mean, I think this one, the more and more I go into my glass, I'm getting more of like a bit of a smoky character, not quite smoke on water smoky, but a little bit of like char. Is there like a certain char that you guys do on those barrels when you do the second barreling?
these are actually just toasted.
Okay.
But you know what's funny when they were fresh, like when they were just brought to us,
Mhm.
they had this gorgeous smoke to them, so almost like
Oh, wow.
smoked fish or something like that. You know what I mean? Like it had that
Huh.
kind of characteristic, not
Mhm.
fish. But that's probably not the best use of
I
use
mean,
of
look,
the tasting of,
I grew up on the
like
coast. I'm a seafood lover. Like, it sounds up my alley.
I mean, hey, it's for the, we live on the coast, eat a lot of seafood. No, it had this like really gorgeous like wood smoke characteristic to it. And that I think definitely comes through with this. I know Westland used to always say, or Matt Hoffman, he would say it reminded him of Kansas City barbecue. So
Oh,
like,
really?
which
Yeah.
is really a great descriptor, I think, for it as well. So you get kind of those like richer sugary plum notes with like this nice heavier rich smoke. But it's not like a hefty smoke, like you said. It's not like smoke on water or anything like that.
Right. Yeah.
And it's
It's
not a
more just
peat
like the
smoke.
the essence. It's not like smoky. Like, yeah, I'll clarify. It's not like smoky like a peated scotch or anything. It just has a hint of that like campfire, maybe like
Yeah.
like barbecue smoke.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
that's a great one. This is my first time trying it. I'm curious for folks in the chat. Have y'all had any Garryana finished whiskeys, whether it's this or maybe the American Single Malt from Westland? Curious to hear what you guys think of it because I've very limited experience, just this and that other whiskey, but I like it. I'm surprised more people aren't using it, but I imagine it's a supply thing, right? Like you're in the perfect location for these casks, whereas other brands aren't.
Yeah, probably is a supply thing. I know they don't make a ton of them per year by any means. Like I said, the oak's not exactly readily available, and the casks are pretty expensive
Mm,
compared to a lot of other things out there.
got it. And how about how long do you do the finish with those casks? I know everyone varies, but I think I can
Yeah,
obviously look it up on the website.
yeah,
But I'm sure
yeah.
you
This
probably
this particular lease, which was the first round, was about 3.5 months. It just depends on the. Some of them were a little bit less, so we did 6 casks in total. So they all kind of varied based upon the profiles that I thought would blend best together. So as they're aging, I'd pull little samples. That's what like a lot of these things are down here, and I've got a
right.
whole little shelf bigger sizes up here. And I would just make up small blends and decide if I liked what was coming out or if I thought a few different ones should age longer. But somewhere between 2 and 3.5 months. So these were pretty quick for
I was gonna
that.
say that's a pretty quick. Is it just that if you left them too long, it would just come across like over oaked or something? Or
Well, no, and so that's something that we're going to push now too. There's a chance it could, but I don't know. And I think we could push it closer to a year if we wanted to.
oh
But
wow,
beyond
okay,
that, it might get over oaked. I have heard from various other people that have worked with these types of casks. They haven't necessarily released anything, and it wasn't in bourbon or rye whiskey. It was
hmm
once again single malt. They're good finishing casks, not good primary casks.
I see. Yeah,
Yeah, at least that was what they told me, which they're not our primary cask anyway, so it's just fine. But I think we could push the bounds further than 3 months without too much of a problem at all. And I think it would just continue to get richer. But it could also be a little bit overwhelming to the bourbon.
yeah. That would be my first thought. It's like because the flavors are so big and like prominent here, I would be curious to see like even longer. My thought being a not professional, just someone that enjoys whiskey, would think that if it's too long, it might get over tannic or over oaky. But it sounds like man, there's some room for exploring there.
I think so. We already are doing another round. And I think I'm going to try and push this one a little bit further. This one will probably, what? What is it now? So what? It might be like 4.5 months, five
Okay.
months, something like that. I think we'll keep an eye on it. But I'd like to push a little bit farther to see if I can get those flavors to maybe sink in a little bit deeper. And oh yeah, that's a great
I
one.
was gonna ask that question. Yeah, Emily pointed out that it seems like not the best wood used for a barrel.
That's the other reason why they're very painful to work with, and if they aren't split correctly at the cooperage,
Mhm,
then they will leak like sieves. And you could see the staining sometimes on the outside of the barrels from time to time. But we got pretty
mhm.
lucky, and the cooperage we work with has done an excellent job of giving us casks that so far haven't been a problem.
Awesome. Well, let's keep it moving. Let's go ahead and move on to different. I'm gonna come back in the end and like share my favorite. I always like not that I'm ranking them, but I also like to share which one like is my favorite. So
Absolutely.
I'll leave that in the glass. Which one should we move to next?
We should go to let's do the French toasted.
Sounds good.
And this is part of our double wood series, which is not an official name for this, but I started putting on the labels. So this is where everything's Quercus alba, American oak, and then it all goes in for at least 5 years. And then it's all going into the finishing cask, and these are all new barrels that have been toasted or charred. So they were not used for anything else.
Got it. Okay. Because I think a lot of times I see French oak, but it's like combo like that with like a wine cask. So I feel like it's rare to kind of just see like so these are new barrels. Just to clarify, is it new barrels you're using that are using the French oak?
Yes, these are new barrels.
Got it. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, and this is kind of fun because this one I actually followed a fun little study that I found from a couple different cooperages in France got together and came up with this interesting impact study for their barrels on wine. And
Mhm.
I just read the study. I thought it was wild and absolutely wonderful. And it was basically how certain whether it's tight grain or wide grain will
Mhm.
affect the wine, as well as thickness of the staves and the length of time in conjunction with those two other variables, and
Wow.
how it affects the product in the end. Some leaning towards more tannin, some leaning towards more aromatics. and sweetness, which was kind of cool, depending on all those different factors. But in particular, there's one thing in that study that's really fun, and it was the fact that somewhere around 3-ish months or so, you end up with certain profiles, and then all of a sudden those profiles will essentially like polymerize into a different flavor profile around 7, 8, 9 months, mostly around 9 months.
Oh,
We
interesting.
kind of pushed the bounds of our particular release because I liked where it was sitting. So mine's not exactly a scientific study by any means, but I just thought it was interesting to follow. And so we ended up doing that. So I've released 2 versions of the French toasted here. The first one, which is I can't remember the name, or that was 22-0008. So I have a bottle right here. And then this one
Okay.
that we are drinking is the most recent release at 23-0001.
Okay.
And same type of cast and everything like that, just different aging times. They're both delicious for different reasons. But this one I think appeals to more people, the one we're tasting. Anyways, it was a cool experiment and it totally worked. So, I mean, what they came up with is essentially what I came out with as well.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm still getting the kind of cinnamon note that I was getting on the last one, but this is a lot more of a sweeter. It's almost like a cinnamon sugar versus
Versus the
like
stick.
yeah, like the stick. I'm curious if that's just the type of the French toasting, because I love a good toasted whiskey, and I always get like a toasted marshmallow note when I get them. And I'm getting a
Yeah.
little bit of that. It's a little more like charred than that. It's not quite as sweet, but there's definitely some kind of cinnamon sugar, maybe even like apple pie. I know that might be a little weird, but I'm getting like an apple pie kind of note.
No, absolutely. Well, excuse me, most of our bourbons and our rye actually have like this really intense apple note to
Oh,
them. Like,
really?
that really comes through in all of them. I don't know if you find that in other MGPs, but we do all the time. Like when we're pulling barrels in the back, the whole warehouse will smell like apple pie or pears.
Oh,
And it's
sounds
hilarious.
amazing.
So I think that already comes through a lot of our whiskey in general, and it could just be because of how we blend a lot of it. I mean, I like those flavor profiles a lot, so certain things I'm looking for when I'm blending the bases.
Mhm.
Um, Also, who doesn't really like pie? Um, so it's not a bad place to start if you're
Right.
shooting for something that people will like. Um, but anyways, and as far as the cinnamon and everything goes, I mean that's a pretty common characteristic you find in French oak as well. Is moving more towards those baking spices, the creme brulee. You get these really creamy notes to and it depends primarily also on the width of the grain. So most
Mm.
people, when they refer to French oak, they're referring to Quercus robur, which is what you most commonly find, and it's what I imagine the majority of French toasted, stave or barrels that you found in the bourbon industry is probably Quercus robur. Um,
Mm.
and it's there's less Quercus robur. It's only comes from a smaller region of France, and but it's the more common one for spirits. This is not Quercus robur, so we wanted to find that. So when you say French oak, there's more than one.
Okay, good to know. I would have had
Yeah,
no idea.
there's two primary and that are used for barrels, and the majority of the forests are actually Quercus petrea, which is sessile oak, and it's a tight grain oak, and it takes a lot longer for the tree to grow, and it's a little bit more earthy, I guess, in certain ways. Um, and less, it still has a lot of tannin and stuff in it, but it's less tannic than a wide grain oak. So this has more of these like really fun um, aromatic qualities to it, so more
Mhm.
clove.
Oh,
Um,
interesting. Okay.
yeah, so that's probably where you get into some of those like nice little spicy notes. You get a lot of like
Yeah.
clove out of it,
It's like it
and the
smells like
way,
fall in a glass.
yeah, absolutely. And it's funny. Actually, the first release, the younger one that was aged for about 3 months or so, actually reminded most people of a really old cognac, which is kind of cool.
Oh, I can, you know what I can say? I mean, because especially with Apple, like obviously, like I feel like
Yeah,
those notes are kind of similar between the two different fields. I'm not very experienced with cognacs or armagnacs or anything like that, but those that I have had do have that bit of that apple characteristic to it.
absolutely. No, and it was neat trying these two. I think this one's more for bourbon drinkers that
Oh,
we're
for sure.
drinking now, which is probably makes sense. Whereas the first one was, if you were really into old cognacs, I think you would really enjoy it. So you find when you should try and find both bottles and try them side by side, if you can. And anyways, we used a different oak than is commonly used, which is Quercus petrea, and like I said, not many people use it, and it was cool. And also, this cooperage is really unique because they primarily focus on medium or medium plus toasting,
Mhm.
so it brings out these really nice mineral qualities of the casks as well. So we
Yeah.
blended into more like some of those nice like baking spices and fruits with this type of barrel. versus like the drier characteristics you get out of the white grain.
Yeah, I was gonna say the weird thing to me is like every time I sip it, it hits the front of my tongue like with a sweetness. Like it's super sweet up front, but then it gets to more of those darker baking spices on the back end of the palate. I'm almost getting a little bit of like chocolate as well. Like it's subtle. It's not necessarily like dark chocolate. Like it's definitely like a sweeter.
It's like cocoa. For me, it's cocoa powder.
Oh, okay, yeah.
The barrels like actually smell like that, which is
Mm-hmm.
kind of cool. And I'm actually glad you said it. It's like one of the primary characteristics that I pick up on all the time is almost like cocoa powder Tootsie Roll kind of thing going on,
Definitely, yeah.
which is really fun. And it goes great with like this one goes really good with food.
Yeah, well, I think this is a super approachable one where I think the Garryana, as someone that does appreciate that, that's a little bit more of a complex flavor. This is complex, but to me, it's approachable. I had to double check the proof. I'm like 110. That does not drink 110.8. That drinks
No.
like maybe right on 100 proof. I'm very surprised that it's that high proof.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were, I got to give ourselves a little props here on this one. We actually won, was it Bourbon Finish of the Year for this
Oh
at
wow,
San Francisco, which was which was awesome because last year we were we were like, I don't know, number 2 or 3 or whatever. I think there was 3 of us last year in the running, and we didn't quite make it. And I was like, I'm gonna get it next year, and we did it.
let's step it up.
So
And you look like
that
you
was
did it
awesome.
so
And
far.
this is the one. This is the batch that won it, which was kind of cool. And it also like took Bourbon of the Year at another competition in New York, which was kind of cool.
Wow.
Even
What
even
was the
beat out
batch
one of
number?
my like inspirational brands. So
Yeah. So for people that may be looking this, can you share the batch number again, just so that they'll know like what to look for?
yeah, absolutely. So it's French toasted.
Hold on. I think I remember how to do this. Here we go.
Yeah. It's the Doc Swinson's Exploratory Cask French toasted. It's batch number 23-0001. And it's just finished in toasted French oak casks. That's what I wrote on the bottom.
Yeah, that's a treat right there. That's like I don't need dessert after that. That's just like that does it for me.
Yeah, but I'm glad. Well, one of the judges came up to me and like gave me a hug after the competition and said, "This reminded me of going in one of those gondolas in
Mm.
Venice."
Oh wow.
I was like,
Yeah, like a
"That's
whole
a tasty
experience
note."
with it.
Oh, it's like it was just a journey. It just kept going on and on and on and on. And I was like, "Wow, okay, right on."
Yeah, no, I mean I agree. This has such a long finish. I think that's one thing I noted when I tasted it over the weekend is like, even though it doesn't drink hot, that lingers on the palate and those spices and the sweetness, it just kind of hangs out there. I mean, I'm such a sucker for like toasted barrel casks, just whether it's,
I mean,
whether it's French or not, just toasted casks are so intriguing to me because they bring out it's a different, like it's hard to explain to someone that might be new, because it's hard to express like, because when I get oak, I'm tasting for 2 things. One, I can taste a bit like a well-aged bourbon. Like there's a certain level of that richer, darker oak. But when it comes to toasting or even like double barreling, kind of like you said, it kind of combines that with I don't want to say tannic, but like a newer, greener kind of oak flavor. And I think those work well. Like when you have a well-aged whiskey and then you combine it with the secondary cask, it makes it complex. And I think it has layers of the oak that I really appreciate.
absolutely. No, it really does. Because otherwise, like if you ever just try a younger bourbon in a new cask, it's not always the best.
Right. No, yeah. That's
So
the
this
point I'm
probably,
making. Like it benefits from being in that original cast for around, like you said, five-ish years for each of
yeah,
these. Like it's not like you're just putting new make into this and be like, here you go. Like it's a
right.
completely different experience. And that's what I love about the series. I mean, they're all so different, yet they're all basically the same base, right? The same like bourbon that went into the blend.
Yeah, yeah. So it's the same bourbon. So all of these have both the 36 and the 21 in it, but
Mhm.
they are at different ratios.
Got it.
So I used to. So it's kind of funny. I've advanced more of my blending skills over the last 2 years now. And I used to mostly put blender's cut into all of our finishing casks,
Okay.
and then to see how they would develop. And that's a really easy, streamlined way to do that.
Mhm.
And there's some really great products that have all come out of that. But as I've gotten the chance to buy more finishing casks and have more whiskey available, I've been able to tweak the ratios more and more of my blending. So
Mm.
each one has a slightly different, it might range, 20% or more between each type or batch. Like from Garryana to the French oak, it
Sure.
might be, on the 21 or the 36. But you know what? You know what the funny thing is? The majority of the time, I end up wandering right back to blender's cut.
Oh, really?
I even full circled myself on that one. And maybe that's just because I did blender's cut, so I just really like it.
Makes sense.
So I'm
Why
biased, but
reinvent the wheel if it's already good, right?
right, exactly. Well, I'm like, I can improve this. I can improve this. So I started playing around with different blends with different casks, basically, and then coming up with what ultimately is like the ratios for each type. And I'm
Mm,
still working on, still playing with it because the goal is to get the best flavors that we can. Right? It's not just
right.
about creating a streamlined process. It's about making the best whiskeys that we can out of the inputs that we have. Hopefully, elevating them every time for you.
I think so. And well, so we have two more to get through tonight, so I don't want to get too close on time. Let's go ahead and do you say that Pinot is the next one?
Yeah, let's do that one. This is a nice dessert cap after the French toast because the cool thing with this is it's also aged in French oak.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I mean, Pinot de Charentes is technically a fortified wine. Usually, it's not fermented at all, though, but sometimes it is. Usually, it's not, and it's the grape juice that is used in making cognac.
Okay.
That has usually a younger cognac or sometimes like an eau de vie added to it to fortify it. So of course it won't go through spoilage, and then that's barrel aged for a Pinot Blanc. I believe it's a minimum of 18 months. Many of them go higher than that, though. It's into a couple years or whatnot. Some upwards of 20 or 30 years even. And it's a really fun fortified wine that you just don't find really generally outside of the areas that they're produced in France. I mean, there's a few big commercial brands, so you could go to like Total Wine and More and probably pick one up, but you're only going to find like one, maybe two.
Really?
They're just not common, and they're made everywhere. They're made all over the place. Anywhere that makes, not everywhere, but anywhere that makes a nice, brandy, French brandy will probably make something like this. So
I'm curious what I guess inspires these different finishes. Is it just you happen to get access to certain barrels? Do you have something in mind? You're like, I must seek out that barrel, from where it's France or wherever. I'm just curious what the thought process is because there's such a variety here.
yeah, it's a blend of both of those actually.
Okay.
Sometimes it's like I work either directly with producers or with brokers. We do both, right? Because it's impossible to ship 1 or 2 barrels from somewhere without. That's just not a thing. And I have some awesome brokers I love working with overseas. And eventually, we'll hopefully get to put some of our direct contacts in on the labels, so you'll know exactly where we're getting them from. That's a big goal of mine. It just takes a long time, and they have to trust you.
Oh, I imagine. Yeah.
It's their brand, right?
Yeah.
And you get to do kind of what you want with it. So you got to make sure everybody's happy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think even if you can just like nod to it, like I mean, I think back to Smoke on Water where it says quarter casks. I mean, I think like things like that. Those who it matters to can figure it out. For the rest of the world, they don't need to know.
That's true. That's absolutely true. We originally were gonna potentially name it La Frog. It's a bad joke, but we figured that's too close.
A little close.
Hey,
you don't want the lawyers calling you up.
Hey, I asked, okay, and you know what? They're very kind, and they're like, "We're very sorry."
Maybe, they're kind,
maybe
but
one day. They're like, "No way." Yeah, quarter cast kind of gives it away, and that's totally fine. So, what was I saying? In order to find casks, sometimes I just like try things. I'm like, this would be really fun. This sounds exciting. More often than not, it's not just the product that gets me involved. It's actually the processing behind the products that I find really fascinating. And those are different processes that I often adapt to some of our products here at Doc Swinson's. Like every one of our releases has a little bit different process behind it. In particular, like our core lines, like Blender's Cut has something completely unique, a process that goes behind how I blend those barrels compared to triple cask compared to Solera method. They're different and they make a difference. I like engineering and processing methods, so I adapt them into this. And sometimes it's the processing method I find so fascinating, and then I find the liquid. I'm like, oh, this is actually really amazing. I think this would go beautifully with our whiskeys. So that's one way. Another is the brokers will absolutely be like, hey, I've got 10 of these casks coming over from this one producer down here that never gives up barrels. And I'm like, I'll take them all. That happens too. I've got a couple of those in the back stewing up right now. And otherwise, there's classic finishes, sherries, ports. Those are just classic and work incredibly well. And they're generally they're the workhorses and trusted finishing casks. So you really can't go wrong by offering those.
Oh, definitely. Well, I was going to ask, my follow-up question is, was there ever a cask, whether you tried it or you decided against it, that you thought would be a good idea and it either wasn't, you like tried it, it just didn't work, or if you thought more about it, you're like, that's not going to work. I'm just curious if there's any like experiments that didn't quite make it.
I wouldn't say there's any casks that I've come across that I tried that didn't work. Like I always
Okay,
found a different way to blend them. Like I found ones that maybe didn't produce the results I initially anticipated.
sure.
So then I started working on maybe I'll blend them this way, maybe I'll blend that way, maybe I'll incorporate it into another profile cast, for example.
Okay.
I think the first one that I really found was that I didn't care for, and it's not because it was bad, it just didn't fit into what I was wanting,
Mhm.
was actually Funky Drummer.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yeah, so the very first barrels I ever did of Funky Drummer are still aging.
Oh no.
So the first release that went out was a different blend of rye whiskey, actually, and I thought it was a lot nicer. But you know what the
Oh,
neat thing is?
interesting.
Yeah, right. So it goes to show, like we won't just shove it in a bottle because we think it's been in the barrel long enough or whatever. We want to make sure it's actually sticks to our name. Like we want Doc Swinson's to be synonymous in your mind with, wow, this is something I'll likely enjoy if I've never tried it, and hopefully really enjoy. And those barrels are still aging. You know what the funny thing is? Those are like 8 or 9 year old ryes right now.
Wow.
And
Okay.
I tasted some. I periodically go up there and taste them. And I tasted them the other day, and they're absolutely delicious. So I think I'm going to release those ones, and they're going to be vividly different than the first Funky Drummer. Maybe we'll call them the funkier or the funkiest drummer. I
I
don't
was
really
gonna say
know.
those deserve a special release of their own, right? With being that
Yeah,
old.
I'll definitely change the label for that one. Maybe I'll put a big 8 or 9 on it. I think it's 8.5 years or 8 and 3/4 years old, something like that right now. So I'll do something a little bit different for that. But those have been really fun. So it just goes to show sometimes letting it just hang out and just trusting that is not a bad decision when you're not sure what to do with it in the moment. On the flip side, um, some cast that made me the most nervous. I don't know if that quite fits in your question, but maybe
Sure.
is the one we're going to try after this.
Okay. Okay.
And for a lot of reasons, and we'll get into that here in a moment. Um, but there is one
Yeah.
thing I've never really wandered down into. I've never wandered into beer casks.
Oh, okay.
I just
Gotcha.
haven't found one that I think would do well. I'm sorry.
I was
Changed
gonna
my
say that's
mind.
interesting because there's so many craft breweries up in Washington. So I'm surprised that there's not like been a collaboration because I know a lot of times whether it's winemakers or whiskey makers that like exchange barrels, like, oh, I'll give you some of this if you give us some of that. Um, yeah, I think I've had one bourbon that was beer cask finished. I've had a lot of what's funny is I love the Jameson Caskmates line. So it's like I think certain other spirits beyond bourbon take on to beer cask really well.
Yeah.
I've only had one bourbon that was beer cask. I know I have a friend in the chat. I don't know if he's still here, Brandon. He loves both beer and whiskey, so he tries all the combos of it. So I'm curious
Hey,
what
if
he
there's ones you
recommends.
like out there, shout out. I'd be happy to go and explore some more. I just haven't found ones that I've been so keen on. To be fair, I'll be honest. I like beer. I get picky about beer. It's just not not quite not quite my area of expertise. And even it's funny. Even wine casts, I'm really picky on.
Okay.
I mean non-fortified casts, right? So like Merlots and Cabernets and Chardonnays and stuff like that. I'm really picky on. I don't do them very often. I do very little of them. But we have released two. Sorry, we've released only one or two releases of it, but it's the same winery down in Red Mountain AVA area, so Washington State, and it was Kiona Vineyards, which is actually the one that took us to San Francisco last year, and we got whatever second or third. They don't actually tell you, but yeah, we were invited to the special event that they announced it at, and there's only 3 of us or something,
Still.
and that one took us there, which was pretty cool. But they're fickle. Cab casts are difficult, and I'm working on a few right now from Napa. That'll be kind of fun, but those ones. They're delicious when they're good, and it takes a long time.
Yeah, well, I can imagine. I'm trying the. Is it Pinot? What's the full name? I'm really bad with wine.
No worries. It's Pineau de Charentes.
Pinot de
Um,
Chiron. Okay.
Pineau de
I can say
Charentes.
Pinot because I'm Californian. Apparently, I'm not from California. I just
Well, there's two Pinots, right? And they're spelled totally differently.
right.
There's Pinot, Pinot, and there's Pineau. And
Mhm.
this is the Pineau. So it's Pinot. I'm not French either, so please correct me if you are.
Better than better
But
than my pronunciation.
Pineau de Charentes. So I renamed this Pineau because I have a tendency of putting really complicated names on our products, and really nobody knows how to say them, including everybody here at Doc. So I started shortening them and changing them, and we're moving more towards songs,
Okay.
which is easier and more recognizable for people. But I at least swapped this one to Pineau instead of the first release was Pineau de Charentes across the whole top, and nobody got that.
Yeah, I think
Not enough.
I'm really surprised with this because I think I had tried the previous expression last time we did a stream together.
Yeah.
To me, this one, like, it's interesting because, like, you said it's basically you explained the process between. Wow, like, why can I not speak?
It's
You
okay.
described the
right there
process.
with you today.
Well, I was just saying, like, I'm getting a bit of like a grape peel kind of like note, not quite like a sweet grape, but like just kind of like a maybe even like muscadine, which I grew up in the South, like we had muscadines everywhere. So it's
Oh,
kind of
nice.
like a bit of like the bitter grape, but it works so well. Like, I mean, it's not overpowering, but again, completely transforms this whiskey. Each one of these is so different from each other.
And I mean, back to your point, like it's funny that they're all the same or relatively similar base, and the percentages only fluctuate so much. Like I said, maybe 20% or so, which is big. But you try blenders cut and session blend next to each other. If you watered blenders cut down to 90, they're quite different tasting, and
Right.
blends aren't terribly far from each other. Yeah, this is a fun one. I actually really like Pinot de Charente. If you could find a bottle, you should find a bottle and you should try it and enjoy it with your family or something like that. It's a dessert wine thing all the way. But a lot of them are beautifully aged, 10, 15, 20 years, and they just have this absolutely gorgeous impact from the grape and the cognac, as well as the cask. So you're right. You get like that kind of like nice grape. It's like almost fresh grape. It's like a really clean version of a fortified wine is maybe a way to
Yeah, I think
describe
the finish goes a little wine on it. I didn't get as much of like that flavor until I had a couple sips, but the finish is long, just like the French toasted. I'm getting a similar finish to it, but this one lingers. It's not quite like the red fruit sweetness that sometimes you get on some wine cask. It's more of the I'm not quite the apple that I got on the French toasted, but it's still more of like a sweeter. I keep going back to muscadine. It's like a muscadine note. I don't know.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, and it's cleaner in the fact that it doesn't get fermented, so it's like
Right.
a cleaner taste to it. It's more like obviously like really nice grape juice if you think about it, and then some nice alcohol, and then the wood has a nice impact about rounding those two out. And this was aged longer. So the previous Pinot that I think you tried, I believe, was 7 months, 7.5, something like that. This was about a year and 2 months.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I think it was a year and 2 months and a year and 6 months. I believe it'll tell you online. I do write it down.
It's on like all the info's on the website. So if anyone's curious, go check out their website because they do a great breakdown of all these different expressions, how long they're aged. And yeah, I'm learning so much just like doing a little bit of research for the stream, just like seeing the process and seeing, you're very specific. It's like 5 months or 5 years, 6 months. Like, I love the transparency. I think we all can appreciate that.
I hope we can maintain that. It's a little difficult as we get more complex because the way I've been building our blending program and our finishing program is I'm saving more barrels aside that age longer and longer and longer. So they're kind of blends of different things from like that could be upwards of, finished from anywhere from, it might be a few months all the way up to 2 or 3 years. So we'll be as transparent as we can, but sometimes I kind of broad stroke my broad stroke. Here's the oldest and here's the youngest. There's some others in between.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We'll see how it develops. We only have there's 4 of us and not a lot of time.
Well, y'all have been, just like absolutely killing it. Like I said, we have one more expression and taster. I know we're a little behind schedule. I see some questions coming in the chat. I'll get to them. So if y'all want to ask your questions, ask them again. I'll feature them at the end of the stream. I saw a couple that I may have missed earlier. But I just want to make sure we got through all the whiskeys before we got to the questions. So submit your questions. And Jesse, tell us about this last one. This is the one that people are most excited about.
Yeah, it makes sense. Everybody's talked about it for a while now. I feel like a few months ago, everybody got blasted with is this the thing to take over all finishing and all bourbon or whatever spirits? It is our Bossa Nova. Let me get that focus right there. You can see right there, straight bourbon whiskey finished in Brazilian Amburana casks. It's the one that everybody is clamoring for. And now I have to try and make it again.
Well, what was the decision? Because like you said, there was so much. I remember seeing the articles like, is this the new trend in whiskey? Is this? And like, I'm curious, like, were you guys already kind of working on this behind the scenes before it kind of not went viral, but you know what I'm saying? Like before it like caught on to being like the trendy cask?
Yeah, I think so. There are other people that have released, like, I know, was it Whistle Pig, and I think there's 1 or 2 other people that have also done this one before. Like maybe a couple of years ago or something like that. The funny thing is we got to tip our hats to the brewers. They're the ones who really brought this one, I think, into the States because brewers love these casks.
Oh,
it's
really?
commonly used to age beer. They usually use vats in Brazil, though, so they're quite large. Basically, big fooders. made of the Amburana wood, and they're the ones that brought it in because it has such an intense impact on the beer. It makes total sense. And then, which is funny because I feel like usually distilleries are the ones that are like, here, breweries, try this stuff out. And it kind of went the
Right.
other way around.
Mhm.
And people, I don't know where they all came from, but there was just a whole ton of them that got dumped in the United States by a bunch of cooperages, and they're like, take them. So I think that's why it got really viral, because everybody's like, we're going to be releasing this. Where's this new barrel that nobody's heard of, kind of thing coming from?
Right.
But we were working on this. I'd say before all the viral news came out, but not that long before. I got these casks about, gosh, not quite a year ago.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe 9 months ago, 10 months ago, something like that. And started playing around with them. And they're wild. They're absolutely wild. So our whole warehouse, I mean, it's pretty tall. It's like 24 feet tall, by like 120 foot or something like that, and 80 foot wide. That's where we keep all the barrels and do all the blending, and we have racks in there and everything. You know what? I only bought a handful of these casks, and they were put in the corner for the first couple weeks because I just didn't have time to get to them yet, and I had to figure out what I wanted to do with them. And every time we'd walk in the back, literally the whole building just smells like them.
Oh wow, that
They're,
sounds
they're
amazing. Like, by the way, the nose on this is so incredible. It's like, I know I said fall earlier, but this is like the sweet. I mean, again, Todd's in the chat. He immediately said cinnamon toast crunch. I'm like, yep, that's what I get to.
To me, like, absolutely cinnamon toast crunch, snickerdoodles. I mean, this is exactly what it is. So Amburana it has a lot of the same qualities as like Quercus alba does. It's fairly tannic. It has extremely high amount of vanillin and a high amount of cinnamon in it, which is vanilla and cinnamon. It's like
Right.
ridiculously high in those compounds. And you could literally just touch the side of these barrels, and I would remember waking up in the middle of the night or something like that, and I'd be like, oh, it just smells like cookies in my bed.
Oh wow.
And that's just from touching it. I wasn't even from
Yeah.
drinking it. It's just so potent. Which is what made me nervous about it in the first place, because normally casks they're not like that. Like, they may smell like, you put your hands on, you can smell them and stuff like that, and you put your nose in the bung hole, and well, to be honest with you, you don't get the kind of characteristic you get out of these. This is like, oh my gosh, this is overpowering.
Yeah, well,
And
that's why I think, Todd in the chat is asking, like, how long did you actually finish with it? Because, like you said, it can be overpowering. It's like, was it a limited time or?
So I'm a little bit more cryptic about this one because it's easy enough to replicate really easily. It's hard enough to replicate because it's a fickle, weird wood.
Okay.
But it's not a very long time. So most of our finishes are, several months, if not longer. Our lower finishes, especially when we first started kind of like doing this, was like 3-4 months. That still is for some of the current ones. This was, let's just put it into this category. It was sort of like week.
Oh wow. Okay.
Weeks, 2 weeks, a week, a half a
I
week.
gotcha. So like not much time at
I'm
all.
sorry,
Like,
I'm really cryptic about that one just because I've had so many people ask me how I did mine, because
oh no, trust me. I'm not stealing trade secrets. Don't spill anything you can't tell us. But like, that's crazy how quickly that can take on those characteristics. Because I just took a sip of it. I mean, man, is this a different kind of whiskey compared to anything we tried tonight?
And to be fair, the other reason why I don't mind being kind of cryptic about this one in particular is because not everybody's getting the same casks. So,
Right.
for example, like we know some people that like do cachaça and stuff in Brazil, and they use Amburana casks, but they were telling me like years in the cask, and I was like, I'm not going to do that. And
Ooh.
cachaça would take on that quality so much quicker because there isn't a whole lot of anything else to back it, because it's a fairly, it's funky, but it's grassy, but it's still neutral in a lot of ways compared to bourbon. And I was like, I don't think I would consider that for this. And what I think I realized is most people actually used Amburana. And
Okay.
I used new barrels. So this is part of the wood series, or the wood line.
Did you end up charring and or toasting them, or was it just
they're toasted? Yeah,
toasted? Okay.
They are toasted. I don't know if you'd want to leave the product in for very long, other than just flavor profiles. I imagine you might get a fair amount of evaporation too, but I don't know. It would probably just taste like floor cleaner if you left it in there too long, to be honest. It has a really interesting medicinal characteristic to it that was really difficult to avoid. So you had to be on these barrels a lot. So, but it was a very short aging time. It was like no other barrel I've ever done.
Yeah, it's like, seems so mysterious that like this cask is like just so powerful. It sounds so weird, but it's like, because I've heard of other people saying like, how intense it is. So it's like crazy to see that. I think Todd said I said snickerdoodle during our tasting. It was the end of the night, and a lot of whiskeys were had that night. Yeah, it's totally snickerdoodle.
Yeah, no, absolutely sticks. And like I said, not normally. I feel bad almost for saying like being cryptic about this one. I'm
That's,
happy to
that's all
help
good.
everybody
All
with
good.
anything as much as possible. It's just this one I got a weird reaction from a lot of people being like, "How did you do it? What do you do?" And I'm like, "No, no, no."
Oh, don't reveal it because it's damn good. Like I want to seek out a bottle of this. This is, I mean, I know I said earlier I would like point out my highlights. I think this is obviously one of my highlights. I don't know. I really like every single. It sounds like I promise I'm not sucking up, but like every single expression we tried tonight works for me. It's all up my flavor profile. Again, I'm a sucker. I love Indiana bourbon, so it's like you're starting with a good base there. You're just making it even better, and I just think every single one of these is such a unique expression. Got to call that one my favorite though. I think probably the French toasted is my second favorite, but
Yeah.
yeah, I'm curious. Do you have a favorite? I know it's hard to ask that question, but do you have a favorite?
I no, I don't think I do. I can't pick one. I have ones like I think it's like depending on what's going on around me and how I want to what I want to drink, I'll pick certain ones. Like I know which one I want to go for if I want this or if I want that or if it's like hanging out in a certain way. I don't really have a favorite, but you know what? I will say I've probably put the most energy into the French toasted over
Mm,
the last year and a half. I don't know, something about these barrels just like stole my heart. And I've hung around these barrels so long and put a lot more in. I feel like all of my products have a lot of intention behind them, and like I said, they all take a lot of energy.
mm.
But the French one, for some reason, there's just something just totally magical about it, and I think it was also the first one I really went and looked at something else to gather information from, as far as like that study that I was talking about,
Yeah.
and wanted to try and experimenting that way. So I think that's why I was maybe a little more invested that way. But no, I don't have a favorite. I think the other one's Garryana just because I know where those trees grow. They my backyard.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. Like, I mean, I think that's part of it though. It's like it's your heritage. I mean, we always call about bourbon being like the American spirit, but how much cooler is it that it's actually using something from your actual home state? Not even you said home island, like the islands you grew up on. It's
Uh,
like
yeah, Whidbey Island.
yeah, that's so special. I mean, I've even had whiskeys made in South Carolina, most of which is really crappy moonshine, by the way. Don't recommend that. But there are some good brands out there that aren't necessarily my absolute favorite, but because I have that sense of place and that sense of familiarity, it does add to the experience. And I think people on the West Coast are excited to see us doing cool stuff that Kentucky's not doing. Other states aren't doing it. I think it's so exciting, and that's why, again, love every single expression that you guys have done so far.
Well, thank you. That it means a lot, and that's. I mean, I'm just sharing what I think is good, and we are here as a team, and that was the goal is to always be true to the little thing on the side of our bottle, which just looks like a marketing term, but it's the bottle when ready stamp.
Yes, I love it.
As
Perfect.
much as we kind of made that as all of that as like a joke when we first started the brand, because keep in mind we didn't start this brand. I don't know if I ever mentioned this. We didn't really start this brand. We didn't all get together and say we're going to start a brand and make whiskey. That's not what
Mhm.
we did. We started wandering into this for different reasons and completely fell in love with it, and literally have just made it basically our entire business over the last couple of years. So everything that we actually talk about is very true, very accurate, and you are all welcome to come see us whether we have a tasting room or not. But maybe call ahead because we're not always here.
Oh, of course. I'm surprised you're hanging out there 8 o'clock at night. I appreciate you. Uh,
Hey, equally, you are too. Doing
I'm at
this.
home. This is a green screen.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I was like, that's a really cool house. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, it is a cool house.
Yeah, I
No,
saw a couple questions come. I know. Do you have like 5 minutes to stick around and maybe answer a couple
no problem.
questions?
I'm here and I still have to finish these glasses too.
Okay,
So
great. Well, I saw some people were just curious about different experimentations with different barrels. Our friend Brandon says, "Do you have any plans to age whiskey in slow gin barrels?" Interesting.
no, but you know what's kind of funny? So I really cut my teeth distilling gin in my early 20s. That's like where I got my understanding of how a lot of the basic parts of this industry really functioned and distillation. Because I ran a small distillery and developed a gin profile. Actually, a couple of them, but one of them was the only one we actually ended up bottling. And
Mhm.
I really like slow gin. That was like a hot topic. That was what, 10 years ago or something like that? 11 years ago. And no, I haven't really thought about aging one, but
Yeah.
maybe I'll add it to the board because we have a board up here that everybody kind of comes with different ideas too. That's another way we find casks. Is we'd be like, "Ooh, I tried this the other day. Would you consider that?" And it'll sit on the board, and eventually I'll kind of wander through and see if I think the profiles are cool. But no, that could be cool. I don't know. Is there one out there? I feel like there'd be an Irish.
If there is, Brandon would know about it. He follows all the craft, like California. He's out here in LA area with me too, so
Oh, right
he's followed all
on.
the craft ones. So
There's,
yeah,
I bet there is one out there, something like that.
probably. I haven't had it, but
It would
well,
be
similar. Or kind of piggybacking off of that question, it's like when you're exploring, like, should we or shouldn't we try this cask? Do you do like a bit of a blend? Do you put like a drop of gin into something? I'm just curious, like what your thought process behind deciding on a cask.
no, absolutely. That's exactly what I do.
Okay.
So when it comes to, there's two prongs here. When I actually want to try the flavor profiles, I'll find a bottle of something that I think is respective of the type of barrel that I'm looking for, right? And
Hmm.
then exactly that. I'll take a little bit of bourbon and I'll put it like a drop of the whatever it is in there and let it hang out for usually 5-10 minutes. Try it, and then
Hmm.
I'll bottle it up and try it like a couple days later because you're gonna really find that development more like down the road. What you get right away is only kind of there.
Right.
You want those chemicals to actually interact with each other, and they will do that. You just got to give them a few days to start getting more of an understanding. What I actually usually do is I actually rinse the glass. So instead of a drop, rinse your glass because if you think about it, it kind of is the shape of a barrel.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I
Rinse
can
your
see
glass
that.
and flick it out, and it gets everywhere. It's obnoxious. Then put your whiskey on top of that, and I think it's more representative. Make sure to
Mm.
blow off the head though. Like if there's a little bit in there, like blow in the glass. It'll blow those heavier aromatics that you just rinsed all over the inside too. And be careful if it's really sugary because it'll stick up to the top. So don't trust the first taste or so. Maybe pour it into another glass after a little while.
It's something I never really considered because I, again, obviously not I'm not doing the blending or the finishing, but that should be a pretty good way to like at least see what flavors you think could work together. It's like if something's totally off, you're like, no, that doesn't work at all. Like I don't know,
It'll
but
definitely give you the indication. I mean, just putting the dropper in there, something like that. And that's what I started doing. I just have a weird personal thing about like, maybe I'll rinse the glass because it simulates a barrel. It doesn't
yeah,
really simulate a barrel, but in my
ah,
mind, it does. It makes
you
me
know what?
happy.
I mean, it's the same as like what like a Sazerac cocktail. You're supposed to rinse the glass and then dump it out. So it's like
Yeah,
you still get the essence of it.
absolutely. And, but to your point, exactly that. It gives you an indication whether or not you just don't even want to wander down that, or this could be something that could be good. And that's the first most thing because the reality is, I mean, we're a small company. We can't afford to be dumping whiskey into barrels that are junk.
Oh yeah,
We really can't. So we have to be really intentional about every single barrel that we go through and blend because losing a barrel is actually, it's kind of a big deal.
yeah, I
Um,
imagine.
and we'd like to buy more barrels, and that's where the selling helps. That's where it's nice to have consumers. So thank you so much for trying Docs.
Yes, absolutely. I got some answers about the slow gin. So Brandon says there's a craft distiller in Sonoma County that has a rye finished in slow gin. He's asking if he can send you a sample. I mean,
Absolutely, yeah. I don't know what's a good way.
uh, Jesse, if you
Yes,
email me your mailing address. Brandon's a
yeah,
good friend of mine. I can just pass it along. Yeah,
sure.
he's like a master of like craft distilleries and finding things. And I think Swan
Oh heck
also
yeah.
said Spirit Works Distillery
Oh
rye whiskey finished in slow gin. That might be the same one. I think they were talking about the same bottle there.
yeah, Spirit Works. I haven't tried it. I think I have seen this as well, actually, and they make cool stuff. I do sometimes envy distillers because they have stills.
Right. But I mean, you guys like
um,
elite, like I really do appreciate one, obviously the transparency, but two, like y'all are using like such like everything's about 5-ish years old. Like that's like such a achievement because I think a lot of craft distilleries aren't. They're, 2 years, 3 years, and they're like, oh, it's good. So the fact that you guys are, one, transparent and two, putting out some well-aged stuff is just like something that makes me, a proud consumer of the brand because like you guys just nail it every time.
Thank you. It seriously means a lot. We do put a lot of energy into these. There's a lot of late nights here, and sorry, my computer keeps doing that.
Oh no.
um,
We'll wrap.
and that's what we want to focus on, right? We just want to focus on blending. That was the goal. We're like, okay,
Mhm.
we could build a distillery. Maybe we still will. I don't know, but that's to be determined. But blending is where our heart's at. It's where my heart was. I mean, I ran stills for a number of years, and eventually it gets a little bit more like watching paint dry. So unless you're able to like experiment all the time, you got to wait for so long. And I'm a little too
Right.
impatient. So
Yeah. No, I can't
um,
imagine. Yeah. Like I think it's so funny because like master distiller, master blender, like I think they're both such a unique, different craft. But like I feel like to be a distiller and to just hope that your whiskey in 5 years is going to be great and not really know, that's so my anxiety could never. There's no way I could do that. But as a blender, you can actually take already good whiskey and make it better. I think that's so fun.
Yeah, I mean I feel like it's been kind of the rise of NDPs over the last couple of years, and realizing that we're not just taking somebody else's juice and chucking it in a bottle and trying to charge you more. We're
Right.
actually doing something unique to it generally, right? I mean, there's a number of us out there that are doing, I think, an excellent job. It's one of the reasons why we got into this too, is we're like, hey, this is a great way to be able to make really cool whiskeys from other people's bases. I mean, basically we're chefs, we're not the farmer.
Right.
Easiest way to maybe say it.
Yeah.
You know, we pick the ingredients with intention. We apply the sciences that we know and the craft that we know to produce the dish.
Absolutely. And what a delicious treat it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I know I keep saying that, but I really am I was so glad that you reached out and offered these new casks for me to try, because they're killing it. I'm going to save them because I got to put together a best of 2023 list, and I think a couple of these might potentially make that list. So not to entice you or anything, but like I'm really enjoying these. I'm going to keep an eye out in the stores. Can you share like where these are available?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Session Blend, the first one we tried, is supposed to be a widespread product. So any of the states that we normally distribute in, which I believe is 27 of them, plus we've got an online presence which gets to 33 states. So if you're willing to go online.
Okay, and is that through your website? Can people find that on Docs?
Yeah, docswhiskey.com. Or just type in Doc Swinson, it'll pop up on Google. And just click the shop now. I think it's the shop button or buy now button. I can't remember. I think we just changed it. But that'll take you to our website, and then that is technically a third party, but you can always ask us questions too if you want to. And yeah, thank you. I always forget the names.
I actually already had it pulled up, so I was ready to share easily.
Yeah, I love it. Anyway, so you can find them online, or most likely Total Wine and More, Bevmo in some places, Specs. Otherwise, just go onto our website, and then you can also use the bottle locator, and you can type in your zip code, and it'll pop up all the stores that we distribute to at the very least. And you might have to do a little hunting for some of the special releases, because sometimes there's only 200 bottles, and it may not have gone very far, for example. So it just depends. I wish it was easier, but online store is great. We usually always hold at least 10 cases aside for every single release and put them on our online store. And they take a little while to get there, I think. So they're usually a good place to buy the bottles that we're talking about today, actually, because these came out not very long ago.
There you guys go. If y'all want these, check out their website. I posted the link in the chat. I'll put it in the description down below as well. But all right, well, Jesse, before I let you go, I always like to ask, like, is there anything cool you're working on coming up? Not that you have to reveal, but is there something you're excited about maybe in the next few months that you're just can't wait to release? I love asking that.
Yeah. So well, there's the new Smoke on Water. It's not replacing the old one, just a different one. I think is really exciting. Because instead of focusing more on like the smoky elements that the first one had, this is focusing more on like the peat reek elements. So like, I don't know if it's a little different. It's more like heavy, like dark tobacco.
Oh, it's still a rye.
What's that?
It's still a rye.
It is still a rye.
Okay.
In fact, it's not just, but it's our Solera method rye.
Okay.
And I just thought it'd be really fun to pull some of the Solera system and put it into these casks that I had still sitting around. And the same ones I used in the past. Well, not same from the same place.
Gotcha.
And let those age, because we had this really nice rye rum impact on the rye. And I thought that would be kind of fun to add to it. Whereas the first one was just rye whiskey. It was a blend of 2 rye whiskeys that were put into the quarter casks. This has now the rum impact as well, which is kind of fun. And the Solera system is, I still need to go through all the documents and make sure this is totally a true statement, but I believe it's all 9 years old at minimum right now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, wow. That's incredible.
At minimum. Is that what I said? Sorry. 7 at minimum. 9 at 8. That's 7. I was like, wait, I got that backwards.
But still,
there's 154 barrels. I filled them over different periods of time, so it's kind of a nightmare going back through. But I do have it all. I just haven't sat down to be like, where's the youngest one and where's the oldest one?
Yeah, and again, that's sometimes we do appreciate that information, but age isn't everything, right? Like sometimes there can be a younger whiskey that is absolutely incredible, and that's what. But I do think rye really does come of age. I don't know if that's the right word, but like I think rye at a younger age actually exhibits some of the intense notes that you have to wait for bourbon several years longer. So like
absolutely
rye, 7 and 8 year rye is like my sweet spot. I love that age.
No, absolutely. Well, we don't disagree at all. I feel like we originally started the whole Solera system with younger Ryes,
Mhm.
3 and 4 year, because they already exhibited really great profiles. But for the fact that the Solera system's been running for this long, and our rye that we originally bought is just getting older with it, so what's
Right.
going into it is also older. But the Solera's been aging for quite a long time. That we actually have been able to track every single release. You could taste the impact of it and how beautifully and complex it's gotten, which is the exciting thing to say really about the age is it's been long enough to really understand how the Slayer system functions, which is cool.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that's one of them. And then I'm going to be releasing a Muscatel.
Okay.
So that's another redo. Different Muscatel producer though. It was an older Muscatel that was in the cast. So it was a 10-year-old Muscatel, which is pretty
Mm.
cool. And so from Portugal. And then I'm gonna release a little bit more of the Pineau de Charente, and I've got some. It won't probably happen this fall, but our next release would be spring, and it would be. I have some Armagnac going.
Oh, okay.
So I was
Okay.
able to get my hands on some really awesome casks that were used for 30 years.
Wow.
So really nice Armagnac, and that has bourbon in them right now, aging. But I think I want to get closer to 9 or 10 months in those casks, maybe a little bit longer. So
Mm.
next spring, most likely for some of it. And then more port. I've got one that's really exciting. So I'm going to say it, but I hope nobody else takes the thunder. I'm just kidding. One already got
They
released.
made
I'm
it
like,
this
dang
far
it,
in
you
the
found it
stream.
too.
You're dedicated. Yeah. Feel free. Go ahead.
It's a white port finish.
Oh, okay. On a
Yeah,
bourbon.
I think somebody who else just released a white port finish.
Well, there was Lefroy did the white. I believe they did the white port
They do.
Cargis release, and then I
Yeah.
know the Midwinter's Night Dram, which is the rye, they did a special white port release, but I have not seen any bourbons that have used it.
Ooh, that's cool. I didn't realize there was a special release of the Midwinter's Night Dram that was a white port. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was what they call. I think they called it the Encore. It was like I haven't tried it. I have no idea how
Oh,
it is.
yeah. Oh, I didn't realize that was a white port. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh. Yeah, that's super cool. I remember seeing the bottle. I was like, should I? I was like, I should find one.
yeah. I
Anyway,
didn't have a chance to buy it, but I've heard good
uh,
things.
white port's super fun. It's like it kind of has like a Vino Verde kind of characteristic to it. So it's like kind of refreshing and nice. So we're doing a white port, but it's also a rye. So
Oh, okay. Well,
not a
hey,
bourbon on
if
this
you're
one.
like
It
me
could
and you
beg
missed out
to
on
be a
Midwinter's
rye.
Night Dram, here you go. Second
That'd be
chance.
cool. Oh yeah, I'm gonna have to try and find a bottle. I'll split some with you if I can find a bottle.
Yeah. Yeah. I looked for it. I couldn't find it because they came out with that and then they had their regular release and like it just didn't work out. It's gotten so popular. I mean,
Yeah,
again,
they're hard.
yeah. I mean, I always love a good finish, right? I guess last question. I promise I'll leave you alone, let you go.
Yeah, no worries.
You guys are doing so much great stuff with bourbon. Are there like are you guys planning to do some kind of similar lineup with rye where it's like multiples at once, like put out, whether it's like this similar one, or is it just kind of more of like one-offs with the ryes?
I definitely focus less on ryes, and the main reason why, and I hate to say it, is just because they just don't move like bourbon does. So when it comes
Okay.
down to business, bourbon moves, rye just doesn't move as quick, which is
Okay.
fine. We just don't focus on more larger volumes of it. So I do a fair amount of rye finishes, to be fair.
Mhm.
Usually it's only like 3 or 4 or 5 barrels kind of thing. It's a smaller quantity versus
Got
the
it.
bourbons tend to be 15 or 20 barrels. And I just, yeah, it's mostly just an economic reason. It's just harder to convince people to buy rye, which is such a shame because rye
I
is
know
so
it's
good.
so good.
And-
I think I've always said that I feel like rye takes better to finished casks. I think just like
Mhm,
you can see way more expressions in the rye versus a bourbon. Um,
absolutely. I mean,
yeah.
I love all the rye finishes that we do, and many, not even just ones we do. I love a lot of the ones that are on the market. They're so good and they're expressive, and they take on finishes. You could kind of beat them around a little bit more. Bourbon, you
Mhm.
have to be a little gentler too. Bourbon can get really strange really quick too, as
Mm.
far as the finishing cask goes. So ryes, you can kind of beat around a little bit more, and they just like take it nicely. Um, and uh, but once again, it's the funny thing is we'll make these rye finishes, and a lot of people are like, I don't like rye just because it says rye on it. But the moment they try, we'll do blind tastings all the time. We like, especially at like events, we'll be like, try this. And they're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. What is this? What kind of bourbon? I'm like, it's a rye. And they're like, no way. I'm like, we don't, ryes are quite different than I feel like whatever strange connotation came with them from a long time ago, maybe. is very different than.
Really?
I mean, we distill them differently. They're manufactured differently than they were a long time ago. They were delicious a long time ago if you liked rye, but I feel like a lot of ryes almost start wandering into the bourbonish category these
Oh yeah,
days.
because there's the ones that are like barely legal rye, like where they're like 51% rye.
Yeah.
But there's also the ones that like 95.5 rye, or in that category. Like I mean,
Similar to
I've always enjoyed them. I think there is a bit of like a learning curve. Like I don't think rye is gonna be the first spirit that someone gravitates toward in the world of whiskey, because it is a little more, yeah, a little more complex. Like it drinks hotter than typically. Like I mean, which I like. I like high proof stuff, but yeah, I think it's something that I wish there was more appreciation for, and hopefully we're kind of getting to that point where we can see more rye casks just across the market, because I'm a huge rye fan. And I take it you are as well.
Absolutely. I mean, rye was like some of the first whiskeys that I really dove into as far as American whiskeys goes, and I just really love them. I like the boldness and flavors. I mean, to that point, there's one more thing that I didn't send you a sample, and I apologize, but we just released a bottled and bond.
Oh, awesome.
A bottled and bond rye as well, which it is a 7-year, because that's what most of our rye is. I'm looking for a bottle. I know there's one somewhere.
I'm intrigued now. 7-year bottled and bond rye sounds amazing.
Yeah. Here, do you have 1 second? I'll go grab a bottle.
Yeah, go grab it. I'll talk to people in the chat. No worries.
I just go to the library.
Oh, all good. How's everyone doing? I appreciate y'all sticking around. I know we're a little overtime, but we got some good info here from our friend Jesse. So, of course, we're doing our after party hangout after this, as y'all all know, over on Discord. Everyone $10 and up gets access. If you're not on there and you are curious, shoot me a message on Discord, Instagram, Patreon, wherever you can get in touch with me. I'll help answer your question. And I filled the time. Welcome back, Jesse.
Woo, that's perfect. No, thank you. Commercial break, right?
I just wanted to self-promote during the gap.
That's perfect. Absolutely. Why not? Yeah, we did release a bottled and bond rye, which is kind of a fun one. I went for like an old school style for the label, so a tax strip.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I like that.
Which took forever to design because I'm not that good
Sure.
a designer. And then, so it's our bottled and bond. It's a 7-year, and we tried to be as transparent as possible as we could on this one as well. So we gave you the age statement, and we also gave you the distillation information right here. So it tells you
the
year it was distilled, the season, and it's really small, but it says which mash bill of the 2 ryes we work with, the 95 or the 51.
Oh,
and
gotcha. Okay.
all those will be check marked for you. So if you pick up a bottle, you'll know exactly what you're getting.
Where can I find this? And 2, like, I'm just curious, like price range, just like range wise, what does it typically fall in?
So please don't ever get mad if you see it for a way higher price. Remember, I don't control it on the outside.
Oh, I know. We're not blaming you. Don't worry.
But this should be $65 to $70.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah.
For
an age statement bottle and bond rye.
Yes.
That's an NDP.
Oh, when you give me that warning, I'm like, oh shit, it's gonna be like $200.
No, I know everybody's like really hot about bottle and bond ryes at the moment. I'm not entirely sure why. I mean, I'm sure I could speculate.
Well, the general rule I think a lot of people think of is like $10 per year. So we're talking about a 7-year rye at $60 to $70. I think that's a very fair price.
Yeah, and from what I've seen, not a lot of bottle and bonds, other than a few big companies, put age statements on their bibs. So it's just kind of interesting. I mean,
especially ryes, right? Like,
yeah.
I'm trying to. I can't even trying to think of other bottle and bond ryes, and most of them that I know of don't have an age statement.
I didn't even think about that, and all of our distributors and stuff were like, "You put an age statement on there?" We're like, "Yeah." I mean, we know it has to be like up to the bib rules or bottle and bond rules, so it's got to be at least 4. But like, we 7 years old, and this is just one mash bill. We have the opportunity to blend 2 if they're from the same distillation season, of course, because it's all MGP.
Oh, so you can blend them after the fact and it still be considered bottle and bond because it's from the same distilling season?
As long as it's the same distillation season and it's the same type and designation, and the same distillation year, of course, from the same distillery.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I never considered that. That makes sense.
Yeah, so technically we could do the 2 mash bills. I mean, and once again, I'm not a lawyer, but that's how I read the law. So, and the
I think so. Like you said, same distilleries, same distilling season. Like you're not doing anything wrong. That's
and just because so many people got honest when we released this, like, or when we submit labels to the colas, people. It's so funny. Half the time I find out my labels get approved from who I forget who always
Coming Whiskey on Instagram.
Yeah.
Yes. I follow them. They're trolling, like not trolling. They're
Yeah.
stalking the TTV website.
Which is awesome because it's funny. I usually will see those before I get the message from the email from the TTB.
Oh,
that it
really?
got
Oh my
approved.
God. That's
Yeah, it's usually
crazy.
like within a day, but it's like I'm like, wait, it got approved, and now I can go look. Like they'll tell me if I log in, but if I don't log in, they send you like an automated message. But it's
Right.
like a day late or something. So it's funny. Half the time I find that out, but I feel like we hear a lot of like funky flack from people that are like, you can't do a bottle and bond because you're not a distillery, and I'm like, we absolutely can. If you just, it's the
Right.
easiest law to look up at the TTB, I swear. And we absolutely can. And we even went to the further mile that that you're technically supposed to do is list both the distilling DSP, which is on the side here, and the
Mhm.
bottling DSP on the side
Oh,
here.
nice. I was gonna say, like,
So
yeah, I imagine you have to disclose that information, but
yeah,
like, that's so interesting. I've never, shoot, I don't even know. I mean, I'm sure there probably isn't. I don't know of any other non-distilling like brand that release a bottle and bond product. That's super cool.
yeah, I know there's a few other ones, but I wouldn't want to say the wrong name. So
No, it's all good. No, it's just the
they're
first
not
one I've heard
cool.
of. So
Yeah, so it's a true bottle and bond. I mean, also the TTB approved it, so if we couldn't, I imagine they would say no because they do say no sometimes. I've
mm,
had that happen. Um, anyways, we're really stoked about it, and it did well in the competition sphere this year, which was kind of fun because we hadn't even put it on the market yet. So we are just like, sure, I'll send the blend up. So, and the neat thing about it too is like we didn't just take a bunch of the 95s and dump them for a batch. I should publish these pictures, but I haven't gotten around to it yet.
mm,
Out of the 64 casks that I had that I wanted to use for this, I could pick any number of casks within there to use for the blend. But so my assistant Garrett, he's awesome. Actually, just got married, so there's a shout out if he's watching or something, or will watch this later. Anyways, we went around and we pulled a glass out of every single barrel, about 100 mils in a Glencairn, set it on top of the barrels, and we go around and we taste it throughout the whole day, right?
okay.
And then we have chalk, and we write on the barrels our profiles that we like.
Oh, okay.
Or what we taste out of them, sorry, not what we like. And then we go around and start compiling which of those sets, so we'll like categorize them into like 4 or 5 generic profile types. So like, what we call like rye forward, so something that's heavy rye spice,
Right.
really wood forward or cask, sweet, and then how long the finish is, for
Okay.
example. And that's just a couple of the categories, but we'll categorize them all and then come up with a blend that works, right? That we think
Mhm.
is best. And then we pull certain amounts of cask for each one of those categories and blend that ratio together. So we get really complicated about making our bottle and bond. We absolutely love doing it because it's just a super fun experience and tasting every single one of these barrels and their unique characteristics and deciding how they should go together.
Ugh,
So it's
dream
not just
job.
that.
I'm just rethinking my day job. That just sounds so much fun.
Well, you got to come up here and join us for a blend one day.
I got it. I haven't been. I've only been up to Seattle. I've not. I'm going to San Francisco in a couple weeks, but not quite that far. But no, for
Yeah.
sure, would love to come up and just see the process and just experience that. Because I've only I've been to distillery tours, but what you guys are doing is so much more. I don't want to say more artistic, but there's so much more. I think is it an art? Do you consider it an art? I know that's like a weird
Yeah.
question, but like
Absolutely. I feel like it can't just be a science, mostly because I don't have a chemistry degree.
right.
So, no, it's absolutely it's a blend of art and science, and understanding how your tools function makes a big difference in how your art comes out, right?
Hmm.
If you understand both sides of it to a certain degree, and hopefully more, and I'm always like learning, we always are here.
Hmm.
Then in pushing those bounds and in your understanding, you can make better and better products. I mean, it's what all artists go through as well. All scientists as well. Like you come up with a hypothesis, you run your experiment, you figure out where you went wrong, and you start over again.
With whiskey, you can at least feel a little tipsy at the end of it, even if it's not the
Yes,
best.
absolutely, and hopefully a lot of other people will enjoy it as well, which is kind of cool. So it's fun because especially like doing these things like with you, Clifton, for example, is like I get to like talk to you and all these other people that are also listening into this and that and grab feedback, which is awesome. Because more or not, keep in mind, like I work on these kind of in a vacuum, and
Hmm.
then they get bottled and released, and then oftentimes it takes several months to sometimes more than a year or so to start really getting feedback on the products that you made, and in that time frame, you're already working on more products and trying to figure out how to improve them. So it's like I think that's probably the most I mean, maybe anxiety inducing part is like figure out what people will buy.
Well, if you ever run any ideas by me, my mailbox is always open. Is all I gotta say.
Perfect.
No,
Absolutely.
yeah.
It's going to get more and more interesting because more of our releases are probably going to be um, like not standard releases, but like every year we might make some cognac finish. Every year we might make some Pinot de Charente finish. In fact, I know we'll
Mhm.
probably do that. So
Oh yeah.
that those are, we're going to have certain standard ones that we'll just put out once a year, maybe twice a year, for example.
Hmm.
And then we're going to have all these like more exploratory, fun, multi finishes, stuff like that going on. But it's interesting. It's really interesting. I mean, we don't come from a long heritage group of people in this industry, so
You don't have to. You don't have to. You just have to be willing to commit to good product, and you guys have just absolutely nailed it. So, well, I know we are way over time, so I appreciate you sticking around. I know you're probably ready to go home, but thank
no,
you.
I love doing this kind of stuff. So I mean, I'm a chatterbox most of the time. Remember, I work in a vacuum most of the time, so it's nice to get out.
Yeah, well, we all appreciate. I know quite a few people will watch the replay tomorrow because it's late for people on the East Coast. But if y'all have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. We'll happy to pass them along to Jesse. Yeah, well, as always, you are always welcome here. You have any ideas you want to run by me, offline or online, just let me know.
Great.
But yeah, I absolutely love these new exploratory cask releases. The session blend is fantastic for the price point. You guys just continue to knock it out of the park. So well done, I guess.
Thank you, Clifton. Really appreciate it. Thanks for having me back on Bourbon and Bites. It's been awesome, and I hope to do it sooner than the last round, but maybe not as soon as the first two times we did.
Yeah, I'm not expecting samples in the next week or so, but you did hint towards some really fun stuff coming up, so I'll be on the lookout. How about that?
It'll probably be about a month.
Okay, that works. That works for me. All right, Jesse, have a great rest of your evening. Cheers,
Thank
everyone watching. I'll see some of you on the after party hangout. Otherwise, I'll be live next week with a few new releases from several different distilleries. I'm going to do a bit of a new release kind of stream, so stay tuned. There's some fun ones coming up. But cheers, y'all. Thank you again, Jesse, and I'll see y'all later. Bye.
Cheers. Thank you, Clifton.